of young, dedicated professionals full of enthusiasm and love for the pulse industry has made Sakhi Group one of the most trusted and reliable partners for clients across the globe. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome Mr. Lilani and Mr. Kumar to today's webinar, and I now hand you over to Mr. Lilani to start the panel discussion. Over to you, Mr. Lilani.
Pradeep, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Dilip ji also to this panel discussion. We have a few points to discuss, and I'll go in the order of importance. I think the big one that is affecting all of us today is the paucity of containers and the high transit time that we are experiencing either in Singapore or in Portland. Now, one way that Myanmar has been able to solve this problem as far as India is concerned is by having break bulk vessels operating between Yangon and Chennai, and even Yangon and Neva Sheva to some extent. Unfortunately, nobody has attempted to do this for Pakistan. But maybe the time is ripe for something like this to be attempted. And I'd like to know from Dilip ji as to what he thinks is the feasibility of doing something on these lines.
Thank you, Mr. Varsal. And it's a great opportunity for me to discuss all the things. First of all, I want to tell you that in Pakistan, we don't have the system of break bulk vessels. So it's not possible to come to on that point. And if we think about the containerized trade, for containerized trade in Burma, the vessels, we don't know when the vessel will come, and we don't know where the vessel is because there's no tracking system over there in Myanmar. So it's very difficult for us, for our buyers. They know where the vessel is, where the cargo will come, and also faces the problem of financial problem for that. So I think this problem is because of the switch BL. If this problem happens in the switch BL, so it's difficult for us to track the vessel and to do the business in the vessel, break bulk vessel. But I think for my proposal is that PPI and OTA should sit down and give some proposals, and OTA should write an official letter to the authorities and with the PPI support that there should be the system for the especially for the switch BL and for this containerized trade. We should think what we will do is that there should be the tracking system. Like in USA, in Australia, there is a tracking system. We buy the cargo from the main lines and we track on the internet that there is a system, the cargo, when the cargo will arrive. But here, the cargo is not traceable. So this happens and that create the problem for the buyers also. Thank you.
Dilipji, can you tell us as to why you require the switch BL? I mean, Myanmar is not a sanctioned country. We're exporting even to the US. So why is this system still in place?
I think it comes to AU dollar system, Myanmar, India, and Pakistan. These are the countries. They are once if we buy the cargo from these countries, we have to pay the AU dollars. And in this system, Singapore, Malaysia didn't come. So for the bank purpose, bank needs the bank need to pay payment for Singapore, for Malaysia in the US dollars, and for the Myanmar, for India, for other Asian countries, we have to pay for AC dollars. So for that, we need the BL switch BL. We have to clear the documents from the bank, and then after the endorsement, we will go for the line, for the due, for the master BL, and then we clear the cargo. It's also the problem, but because of this system.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, we can discuss this separately, after this webinar is finished as to how to handle the solution for it. But coming back to what you said, that break bulk system is not possible. I mean, Pakistan is exporting sugar, you're exporting rice, you're exporting other forms of grains. Why is a break bulk shipment not possible? I'm sure your rice would be being exported in break bulk too. So if you can export rice in break bulk, I'm sure you'd be able to receive pulses in break bulk. And the reason why I mentioned this is that today, if you have a vessel going to Neva Sheva with say 10,000 tons, we can piggyback 3 or 4 or 5,000 tons to Karachi. And even if that is not possible, it is possible to fix a vessel between Jabal Ali and Karachi, say 5,000 tons each. Because if you are able to do that, then the need to have containers completely sort of goes away. And that is how we have managed to lick the problem in terms of shipments to India. Also, what happened was that after the break bulk shipment started, the freight came down from $3,100 for Chennai to almost about $2,100. So, because the container operators also realized that we have an alternative, a much cheaper alternative. So, if you look at the freight today, to Chennai, the freight is $60 by break bulk, and by containers, it's about $82 or $83. So, you got a difference of $22. Maybe the difference as far as Pakistan would be concerned would not be 22, maybe it is 15, but it is still $15 cheaper to get it in break bulk. Now, the reason why I mentioned this is because if you have a $15 advantage, a buyer may not want to buy 5,000 tons, but they can get together as a group and try to achieve this difference of $15 a ton to be able to compete in the market. So over to you. What do you think of the right?
Also, your point is valid, but let me clear this point in two ways. Number one, first of all, we will go for the technical reasons. In the switch bill system, it's not possible for us to import the break bulk vessel. Number one. Number two, Pakistan market is not as bigger as the market will consume the high volume, because if the vessel come over here and the quantity is high, it's not possible for the importers to take the market on the same level. Once the vessel arrival, definitely the market will go down, and vessel arrival will put the pressure in the market. So the two things: once the Pakistan market is for the, you can say they absorb the 100 containers, 200 containers, it's okay. But if we go for the 5,000 metric tons for vessel or 10,000 metric tons for vessel, and the more quantity, the market will under pressure. And the one reason is because of the price will create the issue, and the other is the technical issue is that first of all, we have to sort out this matter of switch BL. Then maybe we will think for the break bulk vessel.
Okay, understood. So anyway, as far as what you said, writing to your authorities is concerned, we can discuss that separately after the webinar is finished. The other issue that we have with Pakistan is the non-GMO certification that you require. Because see, today we've been exporting black matpe to various countries, India, Nepal, Bangladesh. No country is asking for any non-GMO certificate. Now, the problem with the non-GMO certificate is that we can get the phyto and the certificate of origin within 2 days' time. But the non-GMO certificate takes 2 weeks. And very often our people have to go to their office 2 or 3 times to be able to get the certificate. So it slows down the documentation, because we have to send the documents to Singapore. From Singapore, the documents are going to Karachi. Slows the whole process down. And I don't think anything much is being achieved by this non-GMO certificate. So is there a way to sort of handle this issue?
This one is the good question from you. Actually, it's our government's requirement of the non-GMO certificate, because Pakistan our authority don't want any GMO cargo over here. But what we can do, I propose you that OTA should write a letter to our authorities. We will give you all the details of the authorities, and they mention that they mentioned to the government that there should be some relaxation if the same exporter and same cargo at the same period of time, and that exporter exports like 10 consignment, the government should give some relaxation. They should take the 1 GMO certificate. That will be okay. And I personally feel that the government may give this relaxation. And this will only happen once you write an official letter. OTA should write an official letter to the authorities with the support of PPI, and PPI will also support. That might be work.
I see. Okay, we can work towards that. I have a few other points, but before I get to that, why don't you tell me as to what difficulties you've been facing as far as Myanmar is concerned?
we are facing some difficulties. First of all, our main issue is weight shortage. Varsal, normally from the last 4 to 5 years, we are facing this problem. What happens, any cargo, when arrive over here, each container we get 100 kg, 200 kg weight shortage. As you know that this is not the big weight shortage and it will not entertain by the law. And you know that once we go to the exporter for the claim, they said that this is under 0.5% and it is not workable. But you think when we buy the 100 consignment and we get the weight shortage of minimum weight shortage of 50 to 200 kg in 90 consignment, it create the panic to the buyers. The buyers think, why? What is happening? Why the only shortage, minimum shortages come from the Myanmar? We are exporting, we are importing from USA, Turkey, big cargo, no weight shortage, 100% weight we receive. Any in a single consignment, like in 100 consignment, we get the weight shortage. Not the 90% cargo is weight shortage. There should be some solution for this. Please look this matter.
Okay. I think you're not the only one who has complained. We've received complaints from some other sources also. And it is something that the government will have to do, but we will have to nudge the government into taking some action. One solution could be to have a public weighbridge. So the trucks, they do the in and out, and then you get the balanced residual weight of the cargo. But once again, your authorities will have to send us a message, an official message, so we can go to the authorities here and say that, we have received this complaint. It's a perennial problem. You need to look into it, because if you don't, then the reputation of the country could be at stake in terms of being a reliable, efficient supplier. And we can move this situation forward. So once again, after the webinar, we can take this forward. Tell me, what are the other points that you have in terms of where we can
problem which we are facing, actually, when we import the cargo from the Myanmar, normally the exporter do the business with the freight forwarders. And in that, we don't have any tracking system. Like in last few months, you see our cargo was stuck at the Singapore port, the Malaysia port, and our buyers didn't know when the cargo will arrive. And definitely this will create the problem for the buyers, because buyers have to arrange the finance to clear the cargo. Buyers have to do other arrangements for the selling purpose. So it's very difficult in the Myanmar that we are not able to track the cargo. So what happened? What should we do for that?
Now, again, I'm not an expert on this, but my feeling is it is related to the switch BL. Because when we take a switch BL, we are taking it from a forwarder. It may not be the boxes of the forwarder. The forwarder may not have slots on that mother vessel. He's only giving us a BL because you require port clang to be stated on the BL. So when you get that BL, you're not able to track the containers as to which mother vessel they've been loaded on. So one way to handle this, in my opinion, and we can discuss this with the shipping lines and get their input, would be to completely do away with this requirement of the switch BL. Then you have the master BL of the shipping line, and it will tell you exactly as to when the containers are loaded, where the containers are now, which is the intended vessel on which they are expected to come to Karachi. You will have the whole sort of system being displayed to you on those containers. So we'll need to look into the switch BL thing, because that is creating a lot of problems.
Yeah, you are right. One other question which is also related to with this. In Pakistan, it's general thinking, but it's general people's perception that the cost of the Myanmar shipping lines is very high. I think this is because of the freight forwarders business. What is happening when we import the cargo, like from Australia? We know that there are the minimum charges, but when we import the cargo from Myanmar, what happens? We have to pay the dirty charges, we have to pay the damage charges, we have to pay the charges of DO charges, and endorsement charges also there. The cost is high to import from the Myanmar in the shipping line purpose. So it's also create the problem for the buyers, because buyers think that why all the world is we importing from throughout the world, and the costs are very low. But if we import from Myanmar, we have to pay all these charges. Why? There should be some solution for these also. What do you think about so?
See, I tell you, before this container problem started, we probably had about 7 or 8 options in terms of shipping lines willing to take cargoes to Karachi. That 8 has been reduced to about 2 or 3. So if you ask those 3 lines that, listen, we want to know as to what your destination charges are, because only after we have an okay from our receiver to those charges, then we will ship through you. We will not be able to ship with anybody. You'll be left with maybe just one. So what you're saying is right. I mean, this problem is there. But if we try and dig deep into the problem before making the shipment, we will just not have the containers and we will miss the last shipment date. If we have more options in terms of the number of shipping lines that we can go to, and once the situation on the shipping sort of normalizes, then we will be able to have the options and be able to negotiate with the shipping lines. Today, it is quite difficult, I think it is something that we just have to sort of stomach and factor into our costing. Because I have had this problem.
Right.
I've had this problem with the shipping lines, and there's no way. They say, listen, take it or leave it. What are you going to
do? This happens only in this year, but before 2 years, before COVID, this was not the problem, because this year, these last 2 years, shipping lines have the different strategy to deal. The other thing which I want to discuss with you, once we clear the document from the bank, then after endorsement, we have to go to the shipping line for the master bill for the issuing of the due. What happens? Sometimes shipping lines say that the exporter didn't pay the freight, and other things they say that the exporter didn't surrender the master bill. And these things takes 2 to 3 days. And you know that in Pakistan, once we import the cargo, we have only 5 days to clear the cargo. After 5 days, there is a port damage start. And these things take the 2 to 3 days. It means our cargo will go for the damage. And I think this should be solved, because there is a mistrust which the buyer think that why we clear the cargo from the bank, we make the payment, but we are not getting the due. This also a problem for us. So please look this matter. What do you think about that?
No, see, this problem can be easily tackled, because today, your consignment is coming probably after 40 or 45 days. So whoever is the broker in the transaction, the buyer can ask the broker to sort out these issues with the shipper. But listen, we want a message from the shipping line that the freight has been paid. And this, he can probably do it on the 25th or the 30th day. So you still have 15 days time in terms of, getting that message and making sure that you'd be able to clear the cargo from the port quickly. So I don't think that is a major issue. Even in terms of the master BL being surrendered, we can get a copy of the master BL, and the shipping line would put the shop surrendered, and we can send it to you again on the 25th or the 30th day. So I think it's just a matter of good housekeeping, that you can ask the broker involved in the transaction that, listen, can you please sort out these 2 issues well before the arrival of the cargo? And I'm sure it can be done. Because most exporters like us, we got to pay the freight within 7 days of the cargo leaving. We don't get any credit, and I don't think anybody wants credit. We just want to pay the freight, and we want the BL, a freight prepaid BL. But then what happens is there is a time lag between the time the shipping line in Singapore gets the freight credited into their account and acknowledges that to the load port agent in Myanmar. And that person is the guy who's sending out messages to Karachi that the freight has been paid. So the freight is being paid in Singapore. The messages are originating out of Myanmar to send to Karachi that the freight has been paid. And between Singapore and Myanmar, there is some sort of confusion as to whether the freight has been paid or not. That message has not been sent. But it can be sent if you ask for it to be sent. That's what I'm saying.
My last point is, we are importing from throughout the world, from the Australia, Canada, US, and so many other origins. But the thing is that in the Myanmar is that there is too much volatility in the market. Like today I buy the black might pay like $1,050 per metric ton. And after one night, when I came to my office and I got the message, it's 950, 925, 975. Too much volatility. Why this problem is only in the Myanmar? Because the price are like jump too high and comes too quickly. Why only in the Myanmar cargo?
Okay, I'm sure everybody's got a different explanation to this, but my explanation would be that this can only happen in black market. You will not see this happening in Desi. You will not see this happening in Kabuli, because Myanmar is the only country in the world which has got commercial quantities of black market for export. If you had another origin which was competing with Myanmar, would not be so volatile. So that is one reason. The second is that for the last few years, the prices in Myanmar are dependent on rumors as to what the government of India is likely to do in terms of the trade policy. So, when you have a very toxic mix of all kinds of interpretations of what that policy is likely to be, you have very wide gyrations in the price. And more so now, as we approach the 31st of March, you got to be ready for a very rocky ride, I think, in terms of prices. Because every hour you'll get a different set of news and the prices would be dictated by what the sentiment of the news is. That's my feeling.
Is this because of the future trade also? Because the prices are going up and down because of the future trade?
But there is a future trade in India for sure. But and it's good that it is there, because then at least there is a price discovery mechanism in place. But I don't think it's so much because of the future trade. I think it is more policy driven. That's my personal take on this.
What do you think? Should we discourage the future trade? Is this okay, future trade? Because I think PPI should and OTA should discourage the future trade, because the prices are very different when the cargo arrive, when the market is there, and very huge difference in the price. So it will create the problem for the buyers and at the same time for the sellers also. So what do you think? Future trade is good for this market, or PPI or OTA should discourage this future trade?
I think as far as OTA is concerned, it is not within our realm to decide or even influence as to whether the future trade should exist or not. It is for governments that are involved within their own geographies to decide as to whether that is good for them or not. And once they decide, we just have to follow it. That's one. Secondly, it is not necessary that the future market will always be up. It is possible that the future market can be down too. So if it is going to be down, then that is something that would help a buyer, a dal miller, because he knows that down the line, he'd be able to get cargo at a lower price. Again, there's no definite answer from my point of view to this question.
Okay.
But I have a few points to ask you. We have seen an increasing trend, especially out of Pakistan, with buyers asking for 3 containers. The earlier ticket size used to be 5 containers, which has now shrunk to 3. And a guy like me, I don't have a problem with 3 containers, because I will just cost it accordingly. But today what happens is that when you have so much of bulk shipment taking place, and when your suppliers loading 7,000-8,000 tons a week, you go to them and say, listen, I want a price for 3 containers. He hangs up on you because he says, listen, you're not sensitive. I got 8,000 tons loading and you are concerned about your 3 containers. When you ask him for 5, then at least he knows that, okay, India also buys 5 containers. Bangladesh can do the same. Nepal can do the same. But when you come with a requirement of 3 containers, it sort of completely changes the goalpost. So this is something that I want to just reach out to buyers in Pakistan, that is it possible for them to consider 5 containers, because of the next point that I'm going to talk about, which is the cost of doing business, that is defrayed over 5 containers instead of 3 containers. So your per metric ton cost is spread over 5 containers over 125 tons instead of 75 tons. So anyway, over to you.
Yes, you are right. But I think this is the mutual understanding between the seller and the buyer. What happens in Canada when we buy the cargo of 5 FCL, they have the different prices. And when we buy the cargo of 10 FCL single lot or 20 FCL single lot, there is a different in the price. The difference should be in the price. If you sell the cargo $1 or $2 cheaper in the 5 FCL and 10 FCL, definitely the buyer will think about that he is getting the cheaper cargo. Always in world, the smaller cargo have the high cost and the bigger cargo have the low cost. So I think it's for the seller, they should offer the higher price for the smaller cargo and the very little margin, and they should sell the bigger cargo with $1 or $2 cheaper. That will work. Otherwise, if the buyer get the 3 FCL, why should he go for the bigger cargo? He should have some benefit, then only go for the bigger cargo.
Okay, your point is taken. I think one of the other advantages of buying 5 containers is that from our point of view as an exporter, I have 10 exporters that would be willing to give me a price for 5 containers. But if you wanted only for 3 containers, you would probably have just 2 or 3. So even in terms of sharpness of pricing,
Yep.
I think it'll be much better to take a lot of 5 containers. Again, this is something that I'd just like to leave behind as a thought with all the importers. I'm sure they're watching, that it makes sense to consider 5 containers, especially at the time of the season, as compared to 3, because exporters are busy loading bulk vessels and they don't have the time for 3 container lots.
Yeah, you are right, but there should be the price difference. Then only the importer go for the bigger lots.
Okay,
That's
that point
only,
is
I
taken.
think.
Understood. The next point that I have is on your correspondence charges. The bank charges that are being levied. Now, typically, when we get a remittance out of India, it's about between $40 and $60 per TT. When you get a TT out of Pakistan, it is a minimum of $175 and can go all the way to $220, depending on the number of banks that are involved in the chain between Karachi and Singapore, which is where, the money lands up. It is a horrendous cost. Because if you add all the problems, number 1 problem is getting containers. Number 2 problem is a non-GMO certificate. Number 3 is probably you just got 3 containers. Number 4 is that your cost of doing transactions is very high because of these correspondence charges. Number 5, of course, is that when you get the containers, you're not sure as to how long the transit time in Port Klang is going to be. So the best way for Pakistani importers is to try and solve one problem at a time to the comfort of the exporters, so that exporters are more willing to give offers in spite of these problems. So tell us a little about this correspondence charges as to how these have come about and become very embedded in the system.
Normally, we also getting the complaints from other suppliers about this. The Pakistani banks are giving the high charges. Pakistani banks charges are very high. When we approach to the banks, normally banks say that this is not our bank charges. This is not the local bank charges. Because of this intermediary bank, they charge us. That's why we charge you. So I think this is not in the hands of any single importer or any other associations. But what we can do, I think, as an exporter, you should select your intermediary bank, which should be in the panel of that local bank. That will clarify you that why the charges are there. If the charges are because of the intermediary bank, then okay. But if the charges are because of the local bank, then we can talk with the local bank. This is the only solution in my point of view.
But see, Dilipji, there are intermediary banks involved even as far as Indian payments are concerned or payments out of Dubai are concerned, right?
Yeah.
But in spite of that, you don't have such a high charge. So why would it be that an intermediary bank would cost more for Pakistani remittances as against remittances from other countries? I mean, to an intermediary bank, it doesn't make a difference. They're just a conduit for taking the money from one end and putting it in the other.
Yeah, you are right. You are right that the intermediary bank are also in other origins and destinations also there. But our banks normally they give the excuse that we are not charging. We are charging very low cost. But this is the cost we have to pay for the intermediary bank. So my point of view, once you select your own intermediary bank, which should be the panel in the local bank, you know the exact charges. If the charges are not there, then we can talk again to the bank. Otherwise, bank normally gives simple excuse that this is not our charge.
Okay, understood. Maybe this is another point to be discussed after the webinar and see how we can sort it out.
Yeah.
Good. I don't have any other points at this point. If you have any others, we can discuss or we can take questions.
I think it's okay because in Myanmar, we don't have too much quality issues. The issues that I told you, 2 or 3, that's okay.
Okay, understood. Pradeep, do we have questions from the audience?
Vatsalji, there's one question which says, it's Mr. Sunil Patwari of Seasons Overseas Group. How can you track when POL has changed? MLOs are not ready to change POL.
What is MLOs?
I think he means the shipping lines, probably.
A mainline operator. Okay.
Mainline operators.
Mm-hmm. So what's the question again?
How can you track when the POL is changed? How can you track consignments? Because MLOs are not ready to change the POL. Now, I'm not sure what POL stands for.
Oh, that is the port of loading.
Okay.
Port of loading. Port of loading.
Yeah. I think one way of doing it is you have a master BL. Let us say you got a master BL from a line like RCL, for instance. Okay. Now, on master BL, they would have port of loading as Rangoon and port of discharge as Karachi. But that master BL, you kept it aside because now you want to change the port of loading to Malaysia. So if you were to look at the RCL master BL, I think it is possible to track it. I got Hitesh Jain out here. Maybe he's got a... You want to say something?
You can track the vessel.
Okay, you can track the vessel, he says. But Sunil, I think that is the only logical answer that I can give you, that if you look at the master BL, maybe it is possible to track it. I believe there is also a system now in place wherein you just punch in the container numbers and it will give you the whole history of the containers as to what they've done in the last 5 years. So maybe that is the other way to go.
I had a question for Dilipji. You mentioned that you have precisely about 5 days to clear the cargo, after which you have the demurrage charges from the port coming in. Is there a possibility of PPIA as the local, the apex body for Pakistan to approach the port authorities for a little more extended time of free period, given the facts that there are certain bureaucratic delays or process or logistical delays in getting all the documentation together and being received from Myanmar? So can the association approach the port authorities for maybe 2 or 3 more days or 4 more days or 5 more days?
Pardeepji, before few years, the time of the government for the port free days was 7 days. But after the meeting in the ministry, and when they calculate the time, how much time the cargo takes once the cargo arrives, and the buyer take the documents same day or first day, it is possible for the buyers to take the cargo within the 5 days. And this is because of the congestion in the port also. And ministry decided this is okay. They viewed some points where the cargo stops. But now I think because of the single window which arrives in Pakistan, that the time period is short. But if we get the documents and we didn't get the cargo due from the shipping lines, like earlier I discussed the matter with the Varsal, if this does not happen, then it is easy for us if we take the document from the bank first day, and it's okay for us to clear the cargo within 3 to 4 days.
But given the fact that there is a bit of upheaval in Myanmar, so even the government offices probably not at 100% functional capacities, is that also causing this delay in documents moving from origin to destination? And therefore, can PPIA use that as a factual basis to go to the port authorities to say that, look, there is this issue in Myanmar which is causing the delay, and therefore can we look at an extension on the free period, at least till this situation gets resolved and things come back more towards normalcy?
Pradeep, there are 2 points. Number one, there is no disturbance out here as far as churning out documents is concerned. It's extremely efficient. Secondly, even if there was a delay of 2 or 3 days, the transit time today is 45 days. So a 2 or 3 day delay in documentation, you still have a huge period to, as a cushion.
Okay.
So I don't think this would hold.
There's a question that's just popped up. If switch BL mentions transshipment vessel on the BL, then they can track vessel instead of containers. This is the only solution at this moment. What do you think about that? Question is to both of you.
I think it's possible.
Vatsal.
I think it is possible.
This is possible, but in my point of view, if we use the freight forwarders, it's difficult for us to track the vessel. Once we get the booking from the main line or lines directly, then it's possible to track the vessel where the cargo is.
A bit of an amateur question, or if I may say, an Anadi question. When you have the first mother vessel leaving from Myanmar, and if it's a transshipment cargo, does the shipping line also give you the name of the transshipment vessel at the very beginning? Or it is once it reaches the transshipment port, then whichever vessel is available? Because if there's no vessel name available, how can it be mentioned in the BA? At the transshipment port.
So you see, when you do the booking, they will tell you that the intended mother vessel is XYZ.
Correct.
But, it is their option as to whether they actually put it on that intended vessel or not. And 9 times out of 10 at the moment, it doesn't go on that vessel. The mother vessel gets rolled out at least 3 or 4 times. And the reason that they've been giving is that these large vessels, that when they come in from China, they are so fully laden, they don't even stop at port line. They just sort of bypass port line and go on to, Indian waters, Jabal Ali, Karachi, to discharge the containers.
No further questions here right now. So, Vatsal, back to you.
Okay, good. I think we've had a good discussion in terms of the problems that, exporters and importers have been facing. And we will have to, once the webinar is finished, we'll have to sit down and see how to lick these problems. But I'm sure we will find a way around it. That side, I turn the mic over back to you, Pradeep, for the next session, or for the next item on the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Vatsal and Dilipji. I'm sure that the issues discussed by both of you, along with the possible resolutions, will have provided some food for thought to all our delegates who are attending the webinar today. As a matter of fact, if I can hazard a guess or an amateur opinion, probably a lot of these issues are also contributing to the low levels of imports from Myanmar by Pakistan, even where key pulses are concerned. So probably if these resolutions move forward and there are some solutions found, the trade can look at increasing between the two nations. And for all our viewers today, on behalf of OTA and PPIA, I would like to request you to please write in to us with any other issues that you could probably have in your mind. And it will be great if you can also suggest some resolutions. We'd love to hear from you. You can write to us on our email ID, chairman@otamyanmar.com. That way they go straight to Vatsalji and he can then take it with Dilipji and have a discussion on that. Thank you once again for your contributions, Vatsal and Dilipji.